It was the first week of October when my husband, our 1-year-old son, and I decided to spend a long weekend camping in the Appalachian mountains. The plan had been set for weeks, a quiet retreat into nature before the cold of winter began to settle in. We found a remote campsite, deep along a gravel access road, far from the more popular areas. It was remote, heavily wooded, and almost unnervingly silent at night. We arrived Friday afternoon. There were only a few other campers scattered among the trees. No RVs, just tents, and most sat far apart. The closest to us was a woman in her 40s named Barb. Her canvas tent was pitched about 30 yards away through a thick patch of trees. We'd passed her on our way in. She gave us a lazy wave from a folding chair, drink in hand, cigarette dangling from her lips. She was loud and clearly buzzed, but friendly. We didn't think much of her at the time. She was just another soul out in the woods, looking for something a break, maybe an escape. Loud but harmless. Or so we thought. That night, after putting the baby to sleep in his portable crib, my husband and I sat around the fire. It was around 10 p.m. We watched a downloaded movie on the tablet, the flames crackling beside us. The forest was still. Somewhere down the ridge, other campers were laughing and playing music faintly, nothing alarming. At around 2 a.m., we heard Barb return, slurred and full of raucous laughter. She wasn't alone. A man's voice rumbled beside hers. They stumbled to her tent, giggling, and zipped themselves inside. Then everything went still. We looked at each other. "Drunk campers," I muttered, and we left it at that. Then came the crashing. At exactly around 2:13 a.m., we heard the first of it, loud, sickening thuds. It wasn't gear falling or people collapsing into sleeping bags. It was violent, deliberate, followed by silence. And then came the scream. It was muffled, choked back, but real. A sound only someone terrified and in pain could make. And then we heard the man's voice. "If you don't shut up, I'm going to kill you." Not shouted, whispered low, cold. I stood, rooted to the earth. My husband turned to me, face pale, eyes wide. I didn't even think. I ran into our tent, grabbed my phone, and called 911. Signal was weak, but there, thank God. I gave our location, stammering as I described what we'd heard. While I stayed on the line, my husband crept toward Barb's tent. He returned moments later, his voice shaking. "She's down. I think she's unconscious. He's standing over her." I relayed this to the dispatcher. "Help's coming," she said. "Stay on the line. Do not approach him." It was 2:30 a.m. We waited. Every second dragged like a blade across skin. The forest had gone utterly still. Our baby, somehow, slept peacefully behind us. But I couldn't take my eyes off the dark shape of Barb's tent through the trees. After a few minutes, the lights came. Blue and red strobes flared between the trees like lightning. 3 vehicles roared up the trail, 2 sheriff's cruisers, and a park ranger's truck. Officers poured out, guns drawn, flashlights blazing. They ducked into the tent with stretchers. When they emerged, I'll never forget what I saw. Barb's face was bloodied beyond recognition. Swollen, her eyes nearly shut from bruising. Her arms, limp at her sides, she didn't move. I didn't even know if she was breathing until they loaded her into the ambulance. The sheriff approached us after. "You did the right thing," he said. "She wouldn't have made it if you'd waited." We didn't sleep that night. Just sat near the fire, holding each other, holding our baby. We broke camp at dawn and left without a word. A few days later, she called us from the hospital. Her voice was raw, soft, but alive. "You saved my life," she said. Her injuries were horrifying: fractured skull, bleeding in the brain, broken ribs. But she was alive. The man who did it. Someone she knew. A so-called friend. He had followed her back from the party and turned on her when she refused him. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Not nearly long enough. We never went back to that part of the Appalachians. Not once. Even now, sometimes, when the wind gets too quiet or I hear the creak of canvas, I remember that night. It was Saturday, October 15, 2022, around 5 in the evening. We pulled into the small gravel lot off a forestry road near Deep Gap, North Carolina, one of those more remote trailheads along the Appalachian Trail that few people bother venturing into once summer fades. It was our first camping trip since our daughter was born 5 months earlier. I'd insisted we do it. I missed the woods, the quiet. My husband, Mark, was hesitant, but I pushed it. We set up camp in a secluded clearing about a half-mile hike in just far enough to feel truly cut off. It felt perfect. That first night was uneventful, even peaceful. Mark built a fire while I nursed our daughter. We ate simple food and drank cider from our thermos cups. At one point, a man wandered past our sight on the trail, a gray-bearded older guy in a red windbreaker. He waved, commented on how precious our baby was, and then disappeared down the path. Nothing strange, not really. We thought maybe he was just another solo hiker. The next morning, we hiked down to the ranger station about 2 miles away. It was more of a cabin with a radio tower than a staffed post, but we figured we'd stretch our legs. The same man was there again. He acted friendly. He asked how our night was, then again told me how beautiful and calm our daughter looked. "She's just so cute," he said, then added, "It's rare, you know." Innocence, like that. I remember tightening the baby wrap around my body. My husband didn't seem to notice how off it was. Just an old guy being weird, he thought. Probably harmless. We left soon after. I didn't want to be around him a second longer. Back at our site, I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was being paranoid. We had lunch, napped in the hammock, took turns holding the baby. By the time the sun dipped below the hills, the temperature dropped quick. We bundled our daughter in a soft wool blanket and fed her before putting her down in the tent. That night, Mark had to recharge the portable power bank in the SUV a few hundred yards back near the trailhead. I stayed behind in the tent, but after about 20 minutes, when Mark came, our daughter started fussing. I figured I'd feed her again. So I carried her to the SUV. I climbed into the back seat with her, set up the blinders for privacy, and turned on the heater. She latched on quickly and started to calm down. That's when I noticed it. A figure outside the passenger door. At first, I thought it was Mark, but no. Mark would have knocked. He would have said something. This man just stood there. I couldn't see his face, just his silhouette. He had something in his hand. I leaned slightly forward. A flashlight. But it wasn't turned on. He was holding it like a weapon, blocking the handle, like he didn't want me opening the door. My heart spiked. My mouth went dry. I froze, every maternal instinct screaming danger. I fumbled for the door lock, even though they were already secured, and gently reached for my phone. But of course, we had no service. Then, by some miracle, headlights appeared in the trees. A park ranger's truck. The man turned abruptly. The ranger, a tall woman, stepped out with purpose. Her hand was near her radio, maybe her gun. She approached and said something. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the man start talking, fast, gesturing toward my car. I pulled down the window and called out, "I don't know him. Please, help me." The ranger's demeanor changed instantly. She asked for his ID. The man hesitated, then gave a name. She walked back to her truck, did a check, and within moments, her body language changed again, tight, alert. She walked back toward him, and before he could back away, she ordered him to turn around and put his hands behind his back. I watched, shaking, clutching my baby against my chest as she cuffed him. He said something about a misunderstanding. that we'd invited him. Mark came running a few minutes later, having seen the ranger's truck and flashing lights. I couldn't even explain, I just pointed. The ranger came to us afterward, calmer now. She told us the man had given a fake name. Multiple counts of kidnapping. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I don't want to think about what could have happened if I'd come 5 minutes later. I don't want to think about it either." We packed up by the firelight, our baby clutched to me the entire time, and we hiked out in silence. The ranger insisted on following us back to the highway. We finally got home. I sat in the shower and cried the whole night in fear. I swear, we've never gone back to that part of the Appalachian Trail. I never used to be scared of the woods. I grew up in a small town, surrounded by trees and mountains, and my earliest memories are of picking wildflowers or building forts from sticks with my cousins. So when I signed up for an environmental field trip during my 3rd year at university, something that involved soil and water sampling deep in the Appalachian Mountains, it was supposed to be a week-long research trip, part of a larger study funded by the university's ecology department. There were 9 of us total, 7 students, 1 graduate assistant, and our supervising professor, Dr. Kellerman. We arrived at the remote base camp in the evening, just before sunset, our 2 vans kicking up dust as they rolled to a stop at the edge of a wide clearing surrounded by thick trees. We set up our tents under the deepening blue sky. I remember how quiet it was, just the soft calls of birds and the rustle of wind through the trees. At that moment, I was excited. Someone brought a giant pot of homemade split pea soup. I politely declined. I've never been able to stomach the stuff. Only myself, another student named Lane, and Dr. Kellerman passed on it. Everyone else dug in. Later, I'd wonder how different things would have been if I had eaten it too. The next morning, most of the group looked awful, pale, clammy, clutching their stomachs. A few were vomiting behind the tents. The soup, as it turned out, had been left out too long before reheating. Half the team was out of commission. Despite the setback, we couldn't afford to delay. Dr. Kellerman made a judgment call. Instead of sticking to pairs like we'd planned, those of us who were still feeling fine would split up and handle the collection zones ourselves. I volunteered to cover the farthest route, about 4 miles of stream through dense woods, collecting water and soil samples at quarter-mile intervals. I packed my bag with the vials, labels, gloves, and field notes, then set out. It was quiet. The first hour passed in peaceful solitude. I moved quickly, stopping every so often to collect what I needed, jot down readings, and move on. It was about midday when I noticed it. The smell. A strong, musty cigarette odor, stale and heavy, like the inside of a smoker's car. At first, I thought maybe someone from a nearby cabin, but we were miles from the nearest road, deep in national forest territory. There shouldn't have been anyone out here. I paused on a mossy log to eat a protein bar, trying to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The scent didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. It wasn't the sharp, fresh scent of someone actively smoking. It was old, clinging, like the person carrying it lived in the smell. I scanned the woods. Nothing, just shadows and trees and the faint shimmer of the stream beside me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was nearby. I packed up and kept going, this time with less curiosity and more urgency. The forest felt darker, more oppressive. I never heard footsteps, just the silence of the forest and the persistent stench. By the time I reached the last collection point, the sky had begun to darken. I'd lost track of time, too focused on the route and the weird sense of being followed. I finished the last sample and started heading back. It was stupid, staying out so long. The forest doesn't forgive poor planning, especially not in the dark. It was well past 10 when I finally stumbled into camp, dirty, sweating, and shaken. Most of the group was asleep already. Dr. Kellerman was still up by the small fire outside the RV. I didn't want to sound paranoid. Later that night, I woke up needing to pee. The RV toilet was likely occupied by one of the 6 students, so I grabbed my flashlight and quietly walked about 100 feet into the trees. That's when I saw it. A faint red glow in the distance. It flickered once, then flared. My breath caught in my throat. Someone was out there, standing in the trees, just smoking, watching. I didn't make a sound. I just stood behind the nearest tree, my back pressed to the bark, heart hammering in my chest. I couldn't see the figure, just that tiny glowing dot. I backed away, slowly, but I made it to the ERV, knocked gently on the door, and woke Dr. Kellerman. We both stepped outside, but by then, the ember was gone. The forest was black again, quiet, empty. The next morning, we searched the area where I'd seen the glow. We found cigarette butts, at least a dozen of them scattered at the base of a tree. And the tree itself, it had deep gouges in the bark, as if someone had been twisting a knife into it over and over. We packed up immediately. No one questioned it. Even the students, who were still sick, helped as best they could. Within the hour, we were driving down the narrow dirt road, our 2 vans loaded with gear and exhausted bodies. Oh my God. While on the way, an older model van appeared. It pulled out from a clearing just as we passed it. White. No windows on the sides. It fell in behind us. Close. Too close. It followed us for miles. Every turn we made, it mirrored. I swear we drove like that for nearly 2 hours. No other cars. No towns. Just the white van and the road. It only turned off when we reached the edge of the town near campus. We pulled into the university parking lot and watched it keep driving slowly before disappearing down a side street. Everyone was rattled, just unloaded the vans and went our separate ways. I helped Dr. Kellerman store the samples in the lab freezer. That trip seriously killed my love for the forest. I didn't volunteer for another field expedition again. It's been 8 years since that night, and I still can't explain what my brother saw. I've tried. God knows. I've chalked it up to sleep deprivation, tricks of the mind. But none of those things account for what happened. We were deep in the Appalachians when it happened. Way off trail. My family's got some land there, inherited through a few stubborn generations who refused to sell it. It's not much, just raw forest carved into the side of a ridge, but it's isolated, quiet, and untouched. That summer, my younger brother Jared and I decided to take a break from life. Jared, my brother, had just turned 20 and needed out of the house. So we loaded up our packs and set out to spend a few nights in the woods. The hike in was rough. We took an unmarked path from a gravel road that cuts behind the main route. We knew the land well enough. Our grandfather had taken us hunting out here when we were kids. It had been years. We followed old trail markers carved into tree trunks a few times. The forest tried to convince us we were lost, but eventually we reached the ridge overlooking the stream where we planned to camp. That first night, everything felt fine. We set up our tents on a rise above the creek, lit a small fire. We stayed up late talking about life, women, the usual. Around midnight, we started lighting the smaller fireworks, just bottle rockets, and some Roman candles, keeping it low-key so we didn't start a forest fire. At some point, probably around 2 a.m., I told Jared I was going to head back to the tent for water. I'd left my canteen near my pack and figured I might as well grab some snacks, too. The fire was low. "You good?" I asked. Jared nodded, holding one of those long torch-style lighters. He waved me off like it was no big deal. "I'll keep the fireworks going," he said. I walked back up the hill, maybe a 2-minute hike, tops. Dug through my pack, took my time finding the snacks, had a long drink of water. Call it 10 minutes, maybe less. The woods were dead quiet. When I got back, Jared was standing near the smoldering ring of ash, digging through the gear bag. "Where's the lighter?" he asked, not looking up. I blinked, confused. "You had it when I left." "Yeah, but I just gave it to you." That stopped me cold. I stared at him. "No, you didn't." He looked up at me then, and I saw the tension in his face. Not confusion, not a prank. Real, gut-level unease. "Bullshit," I said. "You had it when I walked away." "I gave it to you," he snapped. "Like 5 minutes ago. You walked up, didn't say a word. Just held your hand out. You were in the same clothes. Same hat. Same everything." I stepped back, ice rushing through my veins. "Jared." I didn't come back down here until just now. We both stood there for a long second, staring at each other in the orange glow of the coals. He looked over his shoulder, scanning the trees. "You're messing with me," I said, but even as the words came out, I didn't believe them. "I swear to God," he said. "You came from that way." He pointed toward the trail I had just walked down. "You didn't say a word. You just held out your hand. I gave you the lighter. Then you turned and walked back into the woods. Where exactly did you see me go?" He turned and pointed not up the trail, toward our tents, the opposite direction, into the thick brush where no trail went, where no one should have gone. I grabbed a flashlight and scanned the tree line. Nothing but trees and the endless dark between them. But the hairs on the back of my neck were standing at full attention. "You sure it wasn't just your eyes playing tricks?" I asked. He shook his head. "He looked just like you. Same height. Same build. Same voice." "Voice," he said. "You got it. Just like you. Same tone." I didn't even question it. I could feel something coiling in my chest then. That thing had spoken. Sounded like me. Looked like me. And now it had our lighter. Jared and I didn't say much after that, keeping the flashlight trained on the woods. Eventually, the sky began to lighten. Morning brought some relief, but not much. I wanted to believe it was a dream, wanted to laugh it off. But Jared wasn't laughing. We packed up and hiked out that morning, faster than we should have. I kept expecting to hear footsteps behind us, see someone trailing just out of sight. Later, I've read about doppelgangers, old folklore, warnings. But this was something else. This was someone else seeing mine. Something that came into our world just long enough to steal a spark, then vanished. Whatever it was, whatever wore my face in those woods, it's a mystery we never unraveled, and one that still haunts us to this day.